All right, I guess we can open up the meeting. See Southampton or Easthampton Media is on recording, so that's good. First on the agenda, we have 32 High Street building permit. Is there someone here for that building permit? How about 3 Fitch Farm? One second there, just want to make sure I got this stuff here.
Did we lose Paul?
No, I'm still here.
Oh, okay. We don't see your face.
You guys don't see my face?
Nope. There you are.
See me now? Okay, hold on. I'm looking for the information for those 2 parcels I just referenced, 32 High Street as well as 3 Fitch Farm. Unfortunately, like I said, I have my iPad here, so I feel a little slow. I'm almost with an e-brake on here. Hold on. Did we get any information? I'm trying to get this from my iPad and I'm having difficulties. Did we get any information with respect to those 2 parcels I referenced, 32 High Street, as well as 3 Fitch Farm for the building permits?
Hold on, I'm looking. We got one on Helen's Way. That's not this one, right? That's different.
Right.
That just came in today. No, that's not the same one.
Actually, wasn't Fitch Farm Helen Way?
Is that Helen's Way?
Yeah, that used to be Fitch Farm.
Oh.
So, but that was the as-built for that. That wasn't
yes, that's correct. Yeah, that was what it was, the as-built. And it was forwarded to Randall.
Okay.
I don't know if we got anything for the other ones. Wouldn't somebody come here and present something to us?
I guess.
Yeah, that's Bucky Sparkle, right? With Zen Engineering.
With who? For which one?
For 32 High Street. Remember the stormwater?
The Feltons?
Feltons, yeah.
There was a response from Bucky, and it was indicating that it was going to take some time. I may not have saved it here in my email. Did you remember seeing that?
Yeah, actually, so yeah, I do recall that email. I know that there was a supply chain issue originally with respect to erosion control measures. I'm hearing that's the case with other industry supplies as well, but I apologize. So 32.
I found the email from Bucky. Do you want me to read it?
Sure.
Paul, at this point in the day, I understand that you've had a chance to talk with Greg Felton. I also got off the phone with him and can confirm that the last of the erosion control supplies have arrived Friday. Apparently, there have been problems getting the material regionally. Remaining controls will go in over the weekend. Also, there is a pre-construction meeting with the Conservation Commission on Wednesday, the 21st at 3 p.m. You and the other board members are welcome to attend. Please let me know if you have any additional questions. That's all it says.
Yeah, that was the one I was referring to. Yeah.
All right. So I guess there's nothing else to add on that. With respect to the one at 3 Fitch Farm, I don't have any information other than what Paul sent me in his email. That was one of the building permits. So,
well, okay, so we don't.
We have the thing about the trees.
What?
Sorry, I don't want to talk over people. Just try to provide some information about Fitch Farm Way. There was a request from Mr. Gilaher about the trees. About the request was, could the planning board, for every lot in our bylaws, it says that there are supposed to be 2 trees. We don't specify exactly, or he wanted to know, he wanted input from us on the species. And the response, I'd sent an email, and Mr. Demon had responded back to Mr. Gilaher saying that he referred him to the tree ward for the tree selection. So we referred it to him to make the selection for the trees for those sites. That's my record.
Okay. But is that parcel referred to as 3 Fitch Farm? Is that what you're referring to as, or is that are you talking about the general development?
I believe I'm just talking about the general development at that point. Yeah, because it doesn't say 3 Fitch Farm.
Okay. All right, so I guess we can move on to the next agenda item, which is the joint meeting with the Housing Authority and PVPC. We have Ken Comia here and Jim Stenny as well. So you guys are on? Yes, I see you. Right. Ken, Jim, you guys have the floor.
Great. Right. Thanks. Thank you, Paul. Also joining today are Sierra Simmons and Janet Kane, who are members of the Housing Authority in town. And our goal today in having Ken is to help us coordinate a joint effort in coming up with a housing production plan. And it looks like there's another gentleman here from PVPC also, Mr. Harvey. Thank you. So, I'm really looking forward to what they may have to present. I had the pleasure of working with Ken on the master plan implementation. So I know he's certainly capable, and ask that Mr. Comia and Mr. Harvey, present this joint meeting and outline for us how they will work with us as a joint board effort to make a housing production plan happen. Gentlemen?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ken Comia. I'm from Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. Let me prepare a small slideshow. So I don't know if I have I do have the ability to share. Great. Can you see that? Okay. So my name is Ken Comia, and I'm a senior planner with the Land Use and Environment section at PVPC. And this evening, I also have Ted Harvey, who is the Deputy Director of the Community Development section at PVPC. And we are going to assist the community with a DLTA project. So that's District Local Technical Assistance for this year to help produce a housing production plan. And so this is our first meeting, which kind of is going to be it's an overview of the process, and then we will schedule our next steps. We do have this project lasting until December. So, I think that's good, ample time to work with the committees and do the requirements that are necessary under the state law to produce this plan. So quickly, Ted, you're on the call too. I don't know if you had anything to say, if you wanted to add anything.
No, just good to meet everybody. I'll jump in as needed, but yeah, Ken and I are excited to get the project going. So I don't think I've met anyone on either board, the board or the housing authority. So this will be cool. Good to meet everybody.
Thanks, Ted. So before I get into this, yes, Jim stated I was working with the community on another DLTA project last year, which was to assist the Master Plan Implementation Committee in adopting or in preparing an implementation status report regarding some of the priorities that it had been examining the past couple of years. We underwent a survey process and worked through those priorities, and the Master Plan Implementation Committee currently has that. And I'm looking forward to extending some of that work in the drafting of this housing production plan, which again is a formulaic plan that is set up by the state and has specific requirements. And I'm just going to quickly go through those. So why create and adopt a housing production plan? And I guess some of the big things that, a community may want to look at is, are there housing needs of low and moderate income residents in the communities that are not being met? What types of housing, where are they located for those mixed income and affordable housing units? Are they, in a certain part of town? Assisting communities with meeting the state mandate of requiring 10% of total year-round housing units to be affordable by setting a numeric goal for annual housing production. Obviously, I think, many communities in the Pioneer Valley, especially some of the smaller communities, this may be a challenge, but I think identifying ways to at least address some of the means of which to get a certified housing production plan. I think the committees, we can work through that and have that conversation. And I think one of the big things that many communities in adopting a housing production plan and getting it certified is to prevent unwanted 40B development through a certified housing production plan. And when I say 40B development, I don't know if some of you know this, maybe some of the housing authority folks know, it allows a developer to bypass many local regulations and go through the Zoning Board of Appeals to get their approvals for affordable housing under the state's definition of affordable. So the next slide. What does an approved housing production plan consist of? Data, which basically is going to take, hopefully, I don't know when the new census data comes out, but maybe we can utilize some of that new data for the town. An assessment of housing need and demand based on the current data, population and development trends, and regional growth factors. So the PVPC has a regional housing plan, as well as some data from our data section that could produce, some of these data points that are required under this housing production plan. Limitations. One of the products that will have what will come out of this process will be maps showing where possibly housing can be sited, understanding that there are various environmental constraints in the community. Having gotten to work with the Master Plan Implementation Committee and the Open Space and Recreation Plan Update Committee to update the open space plan, there are, some of those desires by the town for preservation and understanding those needs and balancing them also with the want to provide affordable housing to the community. As I mentioned, locations, and then setting goals, and including an annual numeric housing production target and strategies, recommendations of ways to work towards those goals. The housing production plan is approved by the Massachusetts Department of Housing and Community Development for a 5-year period. And also its approval is by the planning board. And what normally happens too is the select board also approves it, but that is not a requirement, but the planning board must approve it. So this is our kickoff. This is our project initiation, meeting with the boards and determining if it's going to be a meeting of this committee. That's a conversation for the end of this. So if it's going to be a meeting of the joint planning board and housing authority, or if it's going to be a couple of you from each of the boards, just ensuring that there's not a quorum, of each board present at those meetings. I think that because both authorities, both boards have very important roles in the drafting of this, it probably may be better not to utilize the planning board's time, which can get busy during the summer, but instead use committee time, which can really, fine tune some of the process with a planning board member or two and with the housing authority members. So between now and August, this is kind of our housing plan part one. The collection of quantitative and qualitative data on housing and demographics in the community, meet, and that's in quotes, with town staff and officials as needed to obtain or clarify housing issues. Some of the meetings could be with the assessor's office, the administrator's office, building department, among some folks that are on this call, understanding some of the housing issues that may exist, and making sure to document that, and documenting them in these drafts. So preparing an introduction, housing assessment, and housing development conditions chapters, which are 1, 2, and 3. There are 4 required, and the 4th one is the goals and strategies. And then using this committee structure to review the documents in subsequent committee meetings. During this time too, we will have a public meeting. We'll share the housing needs assessment. So the housing needs assessment is made up of your basic demographics, your baseline, understanding the affordability in the community, and drawing attention to that data, which will be produced through our data collection process. And also an exercise to understand the challenges by the community that would be brought up in this public meeting. And I imagine that happening in June or July. With regards to housing plan, the next task, it's the housing plan part 2, and this is the goal setting and strategies and identifying them. So reviewing and prioritizing those identified strategies, creating the draft of the action plan, and finalizing the next steps in planning for the final public meeting. Meetings 4 and 5, assisting with those particular tasks that have been identified to review and prioritize those strategies, and helping to draft the document, as well as having the planning, the public meeting, the second public meeting to produce the overview of housing needs and proposed action plan, creating an exercise to prioritize and strategize on maybe some of those ideas. With any kind of planning process, there is a community engagement component. So I briefly alluded to that in the previous, the tasks that separate the kind of initial data collection and the goal setting and strategies. And so this additional task is the community engagement. There are virtual meetings, maybe the second one, depending on what the pandemic looks like and what CDC guidelines are. Maybe we can explore some idea of in person, and I don't know. That's kind of my optimistic look at the fall, and looking at October to possibly have the second meeting, and then identifying how to go about from that. So as part of this task 2, producing an engagement plan, and that will be reviewed at our next meeting, whenever that is scheduled. Public meetings 1 and 2, facilitation will be provided by us, PVPC, at dates to be determined by the committee. There also is a survey component. So probably at the next meeting, finalizing some survey language that could be helpful. And I know that Cindy, Dan are familiar with some of the engagement tools that we did for the survey, for the community survey for the master plan implementation. Maybe doing another PSA. That was a lot of fun. But identifying ways to engage regarding housing issues in the community. And then the last task is finalizing the plans. Part of the goal will be to submit the draft to the state, getting the comments for completeness and anything that needs to be amended or revised. And we will help address the deficiencies. And then work with the committee to secure the approval from the planning board and select board, and then have finally the final housing production plan, and then our 6th meeting. So really, our next steps for meeting 2 would be to identify the committee that will be working with Ted and I to, go through this planning process, and then scheduling meeting 2. Either and meeting 2 and then maybe subsequent meetings after that if it makes sense to make them monthly, because there are 6 planned, and our next meeting will be May, and presumably at that meeting would be to discuss the survey as well as maybe some initial drafts of the assessments that Ted and I will be doing initially. And that's it. It was a very, quick summary of the scope as far as what our plans are to assist the town in drafting the housing production plan. And, I think that obviously there are probably many more questions that you may have at the onset. But I think that, if we can identify those, we can at least make this hopefully a smooth process. So I don't know if anyone has any initial questions, or if we want to discuss. Oh, you got 2.
Cindy goes first.
Cindy, go first.
I'm usually the shy retiring person. I usually don't have anything to say. So one thing, Ken, I don't know if you were aware of this, or if, I think the Housing Committee is aware, well, Sierra, I'm pretty sure is aware of this, that this town of Southampton participated in something called the one-stop application for state monies. And I don't know, are you familiar with that, Ken?
Yes.
You are, great. So we just got the response back. And while there were 3 projects proposed, 2 of them were not considered to fall into a category that would fulfill, the requirements and the criteria that they were looking for. But the one that did seem to, did you have a chance to read that, Sierra? Did you see that?
Yes,
And that
I did.
that was exploring underutilized properties for affordable housing, which, while there are many complications in all of this, one of them is exactly that, underutilized properties, and where could there be that? Now, what I'm wondering is how does the potential for getting money through this, and it's very much a potential, it's not an actualization. I wonder how that fits in on the whole development of a HPP. That's one question I have. I think I'll just start with that. Does that connect at all? I guess the second question has to do with all the things that we identified. Ken was very much a part of it. Jim was for certain, about the various bylaw revisions, reviews, rewrites, et cetera, that we're going to have, we as a town, a lot of it falling on the planning board, is going to have to do. So I just wonder if you can talk a little bit about those 2 things.
Sure. I think with regards to the first question, and Ted, feel free to interject. I think, the plan is one thing, and it's identifying the various recommendations for the community to achieve, the affordable housing, right? So obviously, there may be additional money that you may be asking for through the one-stop program that will help the town identify those. I mean, we're going to do a preliminary process in that, as part of various previous housing production plans, we've utilized environment constraints mapping to identify the areas of town where, and then also identifying through similar layers that we use in open space planning, where the town may not want to, develop housing. I think it has been identified as a need. I think that the two processes can happen in parallel, should you be getting that money, but we're assisting you with the housing plan, which will get your approval from the state and make you a community that is, certified housing production, a community with a certified housing production plan that will open up you to, future other grant opportunities. And the second question with regards to the bylaws, obviously, there's going to be alignment with some of this plan and what has been identified in the master plan. I think when I quickly reviewed the strategies, I feel like it's still in the back of my head because I literally have been working with the community for almost a year and a half, and so the identification of open space residential, and utilizing that as a tool to understand also your want to preserve certain areas and open spaces in the community, reviewing the inclusionary housing bylaw that you have in the books. I think one of the conversations that we'll be having with the committee that we'll be working with is what's working, what's not working. To my understanding and to my knowledge, I don't know. I don't think there's been any, housing produced under that bylaw. And it's good to know why that's the case and what, if anything, we can suggest as far as a recommendation to get you to that point.
And Ken, can I just interject for a second?
Sure.
Janet Kane from the Housing Authority. With that inclusionary bylaw, people from the PVPC have basically stated that it's worthless. So if we can include this as part of this plan to get a bylaw that's not, and I don't know exactly why those comments were made, but if we can fix that, that would be a big step forward in my opinion. So.
Yeah, and I think the adoption by the town to at least, the fact that the town actually adopted inclusionary housing bylaw, it's not an easy lift to get that at town meeting. So you had either good sellers of this bylaw that, but it also is supposed to work, right?
Right.
Especially if that's a goal. I confirmed with the state that your subsidized housing inventory, and I talked about that briefly in the beginning, is 1.9%. So you have 44 units out of the 2,310 identified in the 2010 census. Obviously, that's going to change since you've had some housing development over the past 10 years. But I don't know if that number 44 is going to change. Right? I don't think it is. And, the Housing Authority is more aware of that than I am. But it's like the regulatory items, obviously, that we will be reviewing, and I think a lot of these processes just kind of overlap. And the fact that you get an open space plan, you get, kind of a new life on your master plan, as well as a housing production plan, all of those types of values align there, and how, bringing housing to the forefront in this plan through an additional survey opportunity, I think can, create some momentum in maybe amending your inclusionary zoning bylaw or letting us help you, amend it.
I just want to jump back to Cindy's question or comment about the one-stop. I'd just be interested to see that, your application and then their comments back, just to see what they were pushing you towards, and whether either in, like Ken said, along with the housing production plan, where those two might meet up, but also if there's any guidance we can give, because I assume this was the letter of interest and then they respond and now you actually have to put the actual application in. So anyway, it'd be interesting to see, because I know there is particular pool grant, some new grants and some old grants or grants that have been around a while, and what they suggested and what they thought you guys should be looking at. So if you're willing to share that, that'd be great.
It's not really my decision at all,
Okay.
but because I'm really just kind of an add-on to the committee, but maybe I could ask the chair of that committee, whose name is Chris Falls, if she could forward that to you. I'd prefer it came to her. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, oh no, that's fine.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
if not, a conversation with her, that's either one. That's
I don't think it's necessarily a problem, but it's just
okay.
something that should come from her. So you're tharvey@pvpc.com. Okay.
.org.
.org. Okay.
Yep.
I'll be in touch with Chris in a moment and
Okay.
ask her that. But go ahead. Yeah.
Any other questions regarding yes, Dan?
Yeah, I had two comments or questions.
Okay.
Specifically, we're looking at gathering data about our current housing stock, and I'd say that we're kind of at an interesting point in terms of housing stock and its supply and demand. And I want to make sure that we're not just sampling this year, but maybe some other years as well to look for trends and velocities and vectors, because I think that, this year may be unique. So I'd hate to see us gather data about this year that leads us to some conclusions that we wouldn't get if we look at a larger data set. So that's my comment, is just, make sure that we you kind of look at it over maybe the past decade or something versus looking at just the year, because try to buy a house this year. Right.
No, and I think I've shared with MPIC in the past that I'm in the process of trying to buy a home, and it has been like the worst experience of my life. Yep. So it's one of those things where I think to create the story for the town, you obviously have to look at 2020 and just kind of address it for what it is. Obviously, you have probably better trends from 2018 and 2019, but I think that holistically, we're not necessarily going to be focusing on the 2020 data, but identifying maybe other real estate trends that may be happening also, and also addressing some of the issues with housing supply at the moment.
Thank you very much for that answer. My daughter's interested in cat housing stock. That's a slight issue. I guess the question, and I think you partially answered it, in the answer to Cindy's question, is what are the benefits to the town for doing an HPP? You said something about maybe that opens us up to some different grant opportunities. Is that the benefit to the town?
So there's that. I think it also is for a town that has a master plan, and the fact that you have a master plan is big. There are communities now that are adopting master plans and identifying the need for one. But being able to address the ability of the town to provide housing and affordable housing, so that's kind of like you just should have that, with a housing production plan. But I think one of the other things also, and I briefly alluded to it in the presentation, was that any community with a subsidized housing inventory of less than 10% can be open to 40B development. It may not be feasible for developers to come out to Southampton due to infrastructure, due to other things. However, that's still, I was having a conversation with a PVPC commissioner out in Pelham, and they don't have, affordable housing, a subsidized housing inventory over 10%, but they are now having to deal with a 40B project that is built in a not very good location, and having to go through that process. So they don't have a housing production plan. So it's identifying that, having a housing production plan, identifying how you can try to get to, the goals that are set by the state, and then some of the other nuance in the code, and creating those achievable strategies. I think that's really the reason why communities may be seeking to have a certified housing production plan.
Okay, just let me summarize what you're saying so that I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that by having a housing production plan, you're showing the state that you're kind of taking ownership over the housing stock in your town, and that you're working towards achieving that 10% goal, or not goal, requirement. And by doing so, did you say that means that they will not force 40B projects on you during that period of time, since you have the
If you have a certified housing production plan, the community can, if a 40B project comes in, you can deny it. I don't know if that's the correct word. I'll have to review that language, but you can say that because you have a certified housing production plan, you don't need to approve this.
I see. Okay. Thank you. That really, those were my two questions. So thank you.
Okay. Jim?
So, Ken, I'm sorry I was distracted for a moment. There's a lot going on behind me. But I just want to, I have three questions, but I just want to add to that, the issue with the housing production plan. I also understand, we're trying to create a housing trust in town, Dan, and the housing trust will allow us to have a pool of funds that we can use rapidly to purchase properties, rather than the town being the purchaser. It's the trust. And it's my understanding that to have a housing trust, you need to have a housing production plan also. I don't know, Ken, if you can confirm that or not.
I'll have to look. But I mean, that makes sense. And a housing trust would normally, or has been, a strategy for achieving affordable housing in the community, in addition to, in addition to CPA, and your CPA plan, if that has identified affordable housing. So I don't know. I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but I can definitely look into that. I don't know, Ted, if you know. No? Okay. We'll take a look. Thanks, Jim.
So if I could, three questions. One, the survey, Ken, I'm just a little curious because, we just did the master plan survey and it has some pretty good information on it. Some of it very specific to housing needs. So I'm perplexed. Are we duplicating, or are we looking for something in addition?
This is a good question, and I was expecting either Cindy or Jim to make this comment.
We didn't let you down.
So I initially in that presentation I had a survey with a question mark. But I took it off right before this presentation.
My heart.
That was specific to, I do think because, and best as far as the community and the appetite for surveys. We had a response rate that was very large. We had 894 responses for the master plan survey, and is during the summer, another kind of long call for the survey. Is that worth our time as a committee, or can we really hone in on the data from the survey, the data that we'll collect from the public meetings, as well as, from the committee meetings to really produce a good plan? That's a good question. And, I put it in there to see, if someone was going to bring it up, and you brought it up, Jim, but I am not against doing another one, but at the same time, I also know, the fatigue of doing surveys for other communities. Ted and I are doing another community another community's housing plan also during this DLTA round, and they've already identified that they don't want to do a survey because they've been surveyed out. So if Southampton, doesn't want to use, if Southampton wants to rely on the survey data from last year, I think that's fine.
Right.
We can tell the story using that,
Right.
as well as the other engagement that we'll continue to do outside of the survey.
I only speak for myself, Ken, but
Yeah.
sure, I'm fatigued from it, but that doesn't matter. It's about the data, and it matters. If you and Ted say, but you don't have this piece of data, and it'd be really good to get that. Be really, then I'm all in. If we're kind of checking a box because that's what we do, we have a survey. We already did that. So it's really about what is it we're trying to obtain? What information either wasn't in the MPIC survey that would be really relevant and therefore important to pursue? Then I'm in. But if it's just like, well, it's been a year, we want to take it again, I'm not so in, because a year isn't going to change that much.
Well, let me ask the question a little more. Jim is so diplomatic. You really are, Jim. You're wonderful. What exactly would you, because you're quite familiar with the previous survey and the data that it came out of it, what don't we know? I mean, can you identify like 3 things that you would want to make sure we asked differently?
That's a good question, Cindy. And in review of the survey instrument that was used in another community, I think the majority of the questions were similar in the appetite for different housing types. I think we didn't necessarily get the affordability question answered with regards to how are the people in town, do they fall within these incomes that suggest affordability in the community? We didn't ask that. I think we actually removed the income question. That was something that we removed. And it's not necessarily asking like, what do you make? It's asking,
especially since we could probably grab that from census data. True?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how current that data is. I have to go into that, but it's quite possible. There's things that can be answered by the census. That's not like a great answer, Cindy. But I'm hoping at the meeting too, if Ted and I, after we review the survey results from the community meeting and then also look at previous instruments that have been used in housing production plan surveys, and then bring to the committee on maybe doing like a 5-question survey, which can be done quickly, maybe. But then, I think that there are ways to also engage and explore through the other engagement that we'll be doing with the community.
And when you say other engagement, like meetings, like something over at Conant Park where we bring people together and
if we can do something in person, that'd be great. But if not, we've had community meetings that we've been doing for other communities. It's not the best, but we can make it, we can create some incentive to attend.
Well, we know we have an all-town meeting coming up in, I guess it's in June now. And while I don't have a lot of excitement about doing another survey, certainly nothing to the level we did before. If there were like 5 very clear, very kind of different questions that we could pass out, we have to get special permission from our town moderator to pass out anything before or after the town meeting, so that we'll never get 896 again, because what we did to get that. So, I mean, the question is, how valuable is that? Is it necessary, or can we replace it with something else? We will probably get a lot of people at this town meeting. As far as I can tell, it might include some really hot topics, and it might, bring out a lot of people. So just a thought. I mean, this is
Yeah.
the time to talk about that, I think, this meeting right now, to kind of figure out if we're going to do a survey or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I say something about it? Yeah, when I took the survey, especially about the housing questions, I felt, no offense to people who made the survey, that sometimes the questions didn't explain what the options meant. Like, I remember one question about like, what is like you could choose like tiny houses. I'm like, what's a tiny house? And like, there wasn't like. So I feel like a targeted survey like we had done that has better, that's maybe limited to the number of questions, but explains the options better so people know what they're choosing from and not just trying to choose the one that they understand. I think that is of value, and we got great response from an online type survey that's pretty good. So I think that you go back, look at the questions we asked, but we might not have. I don't know. I think I want to understand what type. The thing that question in my mind is really what type of affordable housing do the townspeople of Southampton feel is most preferential? That's really like what I want to know.
I think also, and both Jim and Cindy and probably other people on this call that have looked at the results of the community survey, I've harped on this in the master plan committee with regards to the preference for single family homes or, a detached single family product. Understanding though that there are opportunities, I think, that may have been explored by the town in the past with regards to developing mixed uses throughout the town in various sections. That adds to the housing inventory, identifying, that and trying to strengthen ways or identify ways to implement that or incentivize that. The biggest takeaway for me, and I've shared this sentiment, was that people like their single family homes, and trying to figure out how to use that, and then also maximize the understanding that the goal of this is to create affordable housing. How are you going to do that? What types of housing does the town have an appetite for? Where in town can this occur? Especially having identified these in your master plan previously, seeing why it's not working, or what are the issues? What's causing the holdup on either mixed use or other than infrastructure, because we know that's the case for the most part. Yeah.
So Ken, it feels to me that respectfully, Cindy, I don't know that we can answer the question tonight about a survey, because I think to Ken's earlier point, he kind of knows, having produced an HPP, I assume, before for other towns, and having been very involved with our master plan survey, he can match the two, and for meeting two, give us a sense. Okay, you do need or this is what I'd recommend for information that you don't have currently. It might be worth surveying here, but I don't know if Ken is prepared to do that tonight. Sounds like you were looking at a meeting two as a time frame for that, Ken.
Yeah, I was looking at meeting two for identifying either the need to not do a survey, if I think that data can be captured elsewhere, or
right.
Maybe identifying a couple of questions that, if it may be the appetite of the committee, and the committee being using that energy to get the word out, and maybe not get 896, but get a great amount of response on that. That would be the case for the next meeting.
Mm-hmm. So Ken, believe it or not, that was one of my three questions. Hopefully the next two will go quicker. But I have a point of clarification for my second question. So you talked about the subcommittees, and you mentioned, it could either be the full committees getting together, or it could be a subcommittee with members of each board. But then you talked about a quorum. And so I want to know a little more about that, because right now the Housing Authority, we're a 5-member board, but we only have 3 presently that are active. So we all have to be present to, quote, meet a Housing Authority quorum. So how would that work in a subcommittee?
So, I think, it's just being mindful of the possibility of quorum and meeting open meeting law. That's really the only reason I brought it up. So, if the Housing Authority, so if the 3 members that are here, in addition to maybe 1 or 2 members of the planning board being present in this committee to identify that, the only reason why I say that it might be difficult to have these long engaged conversations during a planning board agenda is because you don't want to have all of the other planning board items, fall to the way for, fall behind this. And, I think the conversations are very targeted towards very specific things that the Housing Authority probably have a better idea or clue of than some, members of the planning board. So, approaching this as committee work would be my preference and recommendation, just to take it outside of the planning board, official planning board meeting. But, right. I'll work with the committee, however,
Right. I think that makes sense. I'm just wondering if that's going to, if we make some decisions, do we need a quorum from each board on this subcommittee, or?
No, it's really just for posting. We just make sure to post the meetings, and that's fine.
Okay.
I guess the question is, and I don't know the answer to this, is if there is a need by the select board to identify this committee. That's a question. I don't know the answer. If the select board needs to identify the committee that's going to be working on this.
And are there other such committees, other stakeholders that you would recommend? I mean, a member of the select board, an at-large member from another area, somebody.
If there's a select board member that works, because I know, in working with Southampton for the past year and a half, that some of the committees, standing committees, have representatives from the select board. So maybe if there's a member of the select board that, or attends a Housing Authority meeting, maybe that person, no, okay. It really is interest. Obviously, every community is different, So, and I was just kind of basing that understanding on your community and knowing some of the committees that currently exist.
Is there one for the planning board from the select board?
There used to be.
Okay.
Tom Martin was here and he's not. So right now, without.
So maybe again in June, right?
Right, we could certainly solicit the select board, see if there's interest.
They probably each need another committee to attend.
Right.
Yeah.
They're all so busy, but
Now there's only 4 of them, it makes it.
Right. So my last question, Ken, is I'm sorry if I missed this. Like I said, there was some distraction here, but as part of this effort to produce a housing production plan, will it also include, we're looking at, you talked about geography and you talked about, looking at housing stock and needs and ways to make it work. Would there be any consultation or recommendation regarding, for example, how to implement an overlay district that might make some of this happen? Or
for sure, and so some of the experience I have with producing these plans is, if a recommendation is to look at an overlay or look at inclusionary zoning or an open space residential development bylaw, more than likely it wouldn't necessarily we wouldn't work as closely with the planning board to produce this, but we'd work with whoever would be, bringing that to the planning board, or with, maybe a member of the planning board that would be on this committee to understand the nuance of that bylaw and, propose it as something that the planning board could take up if it's zoning. But there are best practices that obviously both Ted and I work with when we go to our communities. And actually, this is also, your project is also happening in a time where another project that we're working on is to update our model open space and residential development bylaw. So, if that's something that the town may be looking at again, especially because it was identified in the master plan, we can definitely help you, get there, or at least put you in the direction of getting there. But obviously, the planning board plays an important role in that process. Anyone else? All right. Well, so the other question is, so we'll figure out the committee, and maybe at the next meeting, which will be my next question, prior to that, see if we need to do anything with regards to the select board identifying those people, or if it is the housing authority, and maybe through an action of the planning board to allow a planning board member or two to sit on that committee and then work that way. I'm not quite sure because every town process is different, but we'll examine that and see how we can get that to happen if that's something that makes sense to the people that will be working on this plan.
Great, thank you, Ken and Ted, for the presentation. That was really informative. So we'll be waiting to hear from you once you do a little bit of that homework with the select board to see what they prefer. First board, so. Yeah,
I'll work with the town administrator on identifying that process. I guess the one last question is, who is going to be the contact person? Will I be working with Jim or Paul, the chair?
To contact the information.
So because I know that it was kind of a joint application, and I know Jim, obviously, I've worked with Jim and I've worked with Paul too, but because it was submitted by, I think, Paul, just identifying that point person. And maybe that's another question, Paul.
For this time being, I would keep Paul as the point person, since he's been involved with it to date. So
very good. All right, so we will be in.
A couple quick things. First of all, I did get the approval to forward the one-stop decision. I'll send it to both you guys, okay?
Great.
Ken and Ted.
Thanks, Cindy.
And what was the other? Can you email us your PowerPoint with the outline on that?
Yes, I will.
That'd be helpful. Thanks. So maybe it's to the whole planning board, or maybe to the whole two boards that are present.
I will.
And please.
So just so I'm understanding, I thought I heard, Ken, you wanted a recommendation to set them the next meeting, but we're not even sure who's going to be the members, of what percentage, who. I think the housing authority will be able to, obviously has a vested interest, but who on the planning board? We're waiting for some select board input to that before we set a next meeting. Am I understanding that correctly?
I think that's my understanding.
Is that right, Paul?
I'll reach out to the town administrator as far as the process of creating this working group, if there is a specific process. But if not, then, I'll work with Paul Diamond and to set up the next meeting. And then maybe at a future planning board meeting, identify, amongst yourself, identify who could sit on the housing authority, that working group to assist with the production of the plan.
Ken, how many people do you have on that? How many people would you recommend the board be made up of?
I think a good number is 5 to 7. Obviously, that's a housing authority of 3, maybe 2 planning board members. I think the town administrator seeking that and seeking some guidance from him with regards to if there are other interested people in affordable housing in the community, maybe them sitting on the committee too. I would recommend either way a member of the planning board to sit on that.
Is this a case of getting someone who's a developer or maybe somebody from ZBA, or not necessarily in this?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It's someone that, I think in the past has been advocating for affordable housing and the understanding of that. If you get a developer, I think they can bring some interesting, guidance and thought processes to this planning process, but it's not necessary.
All right, excellent.
Okay, very good.
Excellent.
Ken, Ted, thank you again. Jim, thank you for providing some of your feedback from your groups. On the next topic.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Ted.
Thanks. Have a good evening, everyone.
Yes,
Hey, guys,
thank you.
Thanks.
So
Thank you, gentlemen.
Get to us then for the next meeting with Ken. We're not going to set it tonight.
Correct.
Okay.
Good night.
Okay, great. All right, next topic is 151 White Loaf Road. I'm sure most of us on the board received that email or have. Cindy, I can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry. Could I ask you there was a posted agenda which include discussion of the of the public hearing. And I think Bob Kozub is present here tonight. And I just wondered if that is on your list as part of the agenda for tonight.
Yes, I think that was after this topic, if I'm not mistaken. That's what I have, I believe, on that agenda here.
Oh, okay. So
is that
should us housing people stay, or shall we go?
Actually, you know what? I think you guys are all set from the housing. I think we're going. Actually, yeah, you guys are good to go. I'm looking at the
Thank you. Nice talking to you guys.
Cindy, the notes that I had actually had 151 on there next, but you're right. The legal notice does have the discussion for the legal opinion regarding the zoning change at 155 to 157 College Highway. My understanding, there hasn't been anything that's been provided to us yet, so that's still outstanding.
okay. Fine. There's nothing new. There was some confusion about the next steps, whether or not it would go on the warrant or not. I was trying to get copies of the filming, the recording of the public hearing, and it turns out there was a glitch. Easthampton Media had some problems, and somehow it wasn't recorded on Zoom for some reason. So it's not clear what the next step is, and I believe it's actually possibly going to be discussed at the select board meeting, the next select board meeting. So that might be a time when we can hear the legal outcome of that. I'm just saying that because I know Bob wasn't here for the other thing, and I just wondered if that was his purpose for being here tonight, because he had spoken at the public hearing. I don't know if he has any questions or anything. Can you hear us, Bob? Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you, but thank you very much. I'm just listening in.
Okay. Okay. So that's it. I guess there's nothing else for tonight.
Incidentally, I do believe you have the street numbers incorrect in your minutes for that property. Paul?
I don't think we have minutes. We have the agenda has.
Yeah, I don't believe that's correct.
Okay. I'll make a note of that and I'll get that confirmed with,
Okay.
thank you. All right. So moving on to 151 White Loaf Road. I believe most of us have seen that email that's come through our forwards from the planning board. Keith wrote a pretty descriptive account of what he saw in the field, and I guess my understanding is that's one parcel that the work on the land was initially started by the previous owner, who did X amount of thousands of square feet. I'm not sure what that number is, and then that has since been restored, or there's some vegetative growth that's happened on that area. But I believe that owner is going to be coming in for a building permit, and I guess that's something that the board's going to be looking at as a discussion for potential stormwater management measures to be reviewed. So that's a point of discussion that we're going to have in the future whenever that building permit is issued to us. Okay. You guys want to add anything to that? You guys we're all set with that? Okay.
Makes sense.
Good. Okay. And I guess we can jump to committee reports. Is there anything that we want to add from the committee reports?
Let's see here. For one thing, the Open Space Committee is sponsoring some, actually 6 different events. First one is this Friday. I hope you all got the mailer on that. It was a colorful postcard kind of mailer with a fold in the middle, and there's the one this Friday is at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then there's 2 hikes the following 2 Saturdays, and then there's another one on May 14th on a Friday. And then we have 2 special events for large parcel landowners to hear experts talk about conservation appraisals, as well as the conservation planning with tax implications, et cetera. So people are hopefully responding that are going to attend, and I've been keeping track of that. They are supposed to send emails to openspace@townofsouthampton.org. So that's kind of been a rather demanding program that we have a grant for to pay for, and I think we can consider that successful. The MVP process, our town is moving towards trying to become part of MVP, Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness, and I believe, I'm not really sure, but I think I'm representing the planning board on that. I did get called to one of that, and I don't know if anybody else on the planning board got called to any of those planning meetings. It's not clear.
I did.
Oh, you did? Well,
but not for planning board, for another committee I'm on.
I see. Okay, great. So that's happening. Let's see here. Otherwise, you heard Ken Comia speak, sort of reference the Master Plan Implementation Committee, and that report of the survey and sort of the next steps is just about in its final process right now. And that'll be presented at the select board when it's totally finalized. And I guess that's the report I have on that. And then the ad hoc grant committee, you heard reference to that too. 3 things were submitted. I did submit something on behalf of the planning board, and that's to get kind of a jump start on doing a zoning bylaw for a mixed use bylaw. It was not considered something that would be covered under this one-stop program. So that was, of the 3 that were submitted by the ad hoc grant committee, 2 were not considered to be a part of it, and that was one of them. And the other was to try to get some assistance on locating a place to put a public safety complex. That got rejected. The one that got the best attention was towards locating underused parcels for affordable housing. So you heard me reference that tonight. Jim, have you seen that? Jim, have you seen that decision? I'll forward that to you too, okay? So you can read what the results from that initial review were. So those are my committee reports tonight.
Thank you. Cindy, for clarification, the ad hoc committee was what?
Ad hoc grant committee.
Grant committee, okay.
Grant, yeah.
Thank you. Dan, anything you need to add?
I mean, I guess nothing that really relates to the planning board. I think that, you know, we had the plan that we mentioned before for visiting High Street. What we said earlier in the minutes that it was going to be with that Bucky Sparkle. We delayed it from today because of the rainstorm to Friday, so that got pushed off. So.
Great. I have 2 warrants that have come in from VHB for inspection services. One's at Gill Farms for $900, and the other one is for $250 for Fitch Farms. Can I get a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll make that motion to pay those. Oh.
I'll second it.
Yeah, I mean, what else is there?
I don't know if the sign language would have been acceptable, but thank you for unmuting. So that's good. Motion on the floor to approve the 2 warrants, one for $900, the other one for $250. As mentioned, roll call. Dan?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Paul? Yes. All right. I don't know how Paul Demon does this when he's taking notes and running the meeting, but kudos to him. All right. Other than that, I have nothing else on my agenda. Unless you guys have anything else to add, I think we can have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
I move to adjourn.
Hey!
Got you there, Dan. Gotcha.
You're the man.
Dan?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Paul, yes. All right. Good night, everybody.
Good job,
Nice
Paul.
night.
Could be
Yeah,
chair
good
next
job.
year, right? Bye-bye.